It's been a little over a year since the release of Rainworld's Downpour DLC. Downpour completely revamped the game, tripling the number of Slugcats and adding an incredible amount of content, including local co-op, expeditions, arena challenges, and more. With rumors of more updates on the horizon, it's a great time to look back at what Downpour did right, and more importantly, what it didn't.
What fate a slugcat? Prey and predator.
A lost slugcat is thrust into a dying world, separated from its family. It wanders, alone, unable to comprehend or care for a collapsing society as it struggles to merely survive. Rainworld is a masterclass in atmosphere and immersion. Everything you see is through the lens of the slugcat. Aside from a sparse few tutorial messages, the game does not tell you anything directly. A strange yellow machine seeks to guide you. Do you follow it? To what end is it guiding you? You, the player, know just as much as the slugcat. You learn alongside the creature you play as, discovering new lands, foods, and predators. As you search, dreams and nightmares wash over the slugcat with emotional and beautiful artwork letting the player know exactly what the slugcat feels. They're alone, scared, longing for the comfort of their family. If this sounds compelling to you and you haven't played Rainworld, I would suggest stopping this video and getting the game. Your first playthrough can only happen once, and the rest of this video will contain major spoilers that will significantly diminish the game's experience. In time, the slugcat is drawn to another lost soul. The two cannot communicate, but a choice is given to the player. There is a powerless creature before you, harmless, broken, but alive, and clearly intelligent. The yellow machine led you here. You can eat the white flies above it, which is protested and causes the creature to spasm in pain, eventually killing it if all of them are consumed. Or, you can simply leave. You have met a new friend and she will continue to help you on your journey, guiding you to a fate unknown. This choice is given wordlessly. The player may not even realize that a choice is possible. That is the beauty of Rainworld's immersion. The player is the slugcat. They don't know what this creature is or what it wants. They can't communicate, nor has the slugcat ever seen a being like this before. But the player decides what fate a slugcat nonetheless. In time, the slugcat will find itself before a godlike remnant of the past civilization. They are granted the ability to understand their language and your fate is made clear. This incomprehensible being informs you of a way to break the cycle and escape from this hellish world. But the player is nothing more than a mild nuisance to a god whose charity was bestowed reluctantly, as required by their programming. With this gift of communication, you can uncover scattered details of the world through lingering remnants of ancients and the friend you encountered earlier. She cannot help you, but will happily keep you company, reading to you and giving you information on any objects you bring her. You can bring her neuron flies, providing some small comfort to a lonely soul, but she is nothing more than an echo of a dead god. The player then leads the slugcat to their final fate, the Void Sea, deep beneath the world, where they ascend from this reality. What this means is unknown. The slugcat assumes a new form and dives down into the Void Sea, which bears much resemblance to the fertilization of an egg. Has the cycle truly ended? Is this another rebirth? This mystery and many more from the game are left unanswered. The player receives sparse few details and is left to draw their own conclusions. Lore is hard to come by, requiring you to bring colored data pearls to Looks to the Moon after receiving the Mark of Communication. Each pearl is a story, requiring a journey through a deadly world to hear. After completing the campaign, the player unlocks Hunter, which is the game's hard mode. The environment is much deadlier and the player requires much more food, but they are able to eat predators and are more competent at fighting. Furthermore, Hunter is dying of an incurable illness, giving the player a limited amount of time in the world. Once again, the player decides what fate a slugcat. Hunter arrives with a green neuron fly, the purpose of which is made clear upon visiting either of the Iterators. If that neuron fly is brought to Looks to the Moon, she will be revived, becoming the shadow of her past self that survivor later encounters. It's a small kindness to a lost soul in a dying world, but does nothing to help. You do not have much time. It is admirable what you choose to do with it. Ultimately, Hunter will either succumb to their illness and die or ascend to the Void Sea, depending on whether the player could reach the ending fast enough. Hunter's role is different from Survivor. He is not a lost soul wandering an unfamiliar world. He is a dying creature struggling to make the most of his final days. Hunter is higher up on the food chain, but still far from the top. His abilities are grounded and simple. Hunter does what Survivor does, but better. He is faster, stronger, and can carry a spear on his back. Hunter's campaign is the first instance of Slugcats engaging with the affairs of Iterators, as it is revealed that Hunter was sent by no significant harassment in the data pool that he spawns with. That is what Rain World was before the Downpour DLC, a story of lost and dying Slugcats struggling to escape the cycle, one forced to live, the other condemned to die. Downpour implemented a large amount of changes and came alongside the remix update, which I'll be considering as part of Downpour for this video. However, even if you don't have the Downpour DLC, you'll still have the remix mod settings that can be adjusted and mod support through the remix menu. The Downpour campaigns follow the stories of Gourmand, Artificer, Spearmaster, Rivulet, and Saint, each of which have powerful and unique abilities. Artificer can double jump and craft some of the most powerful weapons in the game at almost no cost. Spearmaster can produce infinite spears. Rivulet is substantially faster than every other Slugcat. Saint has an incredibly powerful tongue that allows them to avoid almost every predator with ease. And, Gourmand instantly kills most enemies with spear throws and can craft almost any item in the game. Oh, and lizard bites are never fatal. Also, you can create matter at will by coughing up items. And your body deals large amounts of damage if you fall on things. These Slugcats are, if you'll excuse me, godlike in comparison. You are not a lost soul near the bottom of the food chain, you're at the top. You are the most powerful being in the room at all times. You aren't struggling to survive, you're either death incarnate or unmatched in mobility. It is extremely evident that more Slugcats started as a mod because the design philosophies of these Slugcats are not compatible with the base game.
Each beast has a place on the food chain.
No, they don't. They'll all just prey for you. A simulated ecosystem falls apart when the player overpowers everything else in it. The shift in the game's tone is unmistakable. It's no longer a game about struggling to survive in a hostile world. It's a game about using your incredible abilities to kill or dodge everything in that world. It lost a lot of what made the game so unique and charming and gained more elements of typical platformer games. But I can't be overly critical of Downpour for that. The reality is that a DLC could never fully recapture what made Rain World so unique and special, because that relied on being in an unknown world. You can't align the knowledge of the Slugcat and player when the player already knows the game. You can only go through Five Pebbles or memory crypts for the first time once. You can't unlearn maps or forget how to pop popcorn plants and bubble fruit. Something needed to change. The question is, did Downpour make the correct changes? In my opinion, Downpour went too far. Gourmand's story is of a Slugcat venturing out into a new land in search of foods, then returning home to their colony. They have no desire to meddle with the affairs of Iterators or ascend. They want to discover what edible foods exist in this area. That's a pretty neat premise for a campaign. It's low stakes, grounded, and completely undermined by the fact that Gourmand can craft or cough up 14 of the 22 items they need to eat for the food tracker quest. Why can Gourmand craft items at all? Slugcats aren't shown to be very intelligent, certainly not to the point of making this. Alright, but what about the foods you can't craft? Those can be pretty tough. I mean, there's a red centipede. Oh yeah, Gourmand can just craft spore puffs to kill the centipede. And they one-shot all of the lizards with a spear. Artificer is a story of a mother seeking vengeance for the death of her children. Okay, great start. Why can she double jump though, and make explosives at will and pull spears from walls and maul creatures? The idea of being locked into a permanently hostile state with scavengers is interesting. They're one of Rain World's most unique creatures. Would it have been more compelling if Artificer wasn't a death machine? I think it would have. I don't really have a problem with Spearmaster's mechanics. I think they're the weakest and simplest of the Downpour Slugcats. They're like an off-brand Hunter, and I love Hunter. Rivulet is another incredible concept that was taken too far. The death of the world has progressed, and cycles are now much shorter. You need to get from shelter to shelter quickly, and you move at light speed. You can just jump over every creature. Nothing can grab you. The ecosystem in Rivulet's campaign basically doesn't exist. Once you get the ball, that whole short cycles thing, yeah, get that out of here. Every cycle is extremely long, and you are extremely fast, and have the power to manipulate gravity at will and basically fly. What if the world was more flooded and Rivulet wasn't much faster on land? What if the short cycles actually continued after you got the ball, or even got worse instead of removing the only difficult and interesting aspect of the campaign? And Saint, again, very cool idea. You're a frail, weak slugcat needing to evade dangerous predators in a harsh, snowy world. Warmth is a really cool mechanic. The areas are visually beautiful, and enemies might as well not exist most of the time because your tongue is so powerful you can just go right over them. And then you literally get the ability to fly and insta-kill everything. All of the Slugcats except Spearmaster have the exact same issue. There's a cool concept, but it's taken to an extreme that makes them not feel like Rainworld. That beautiful story of a lost slugcat in the middle of the food chain has been forgotten, opting for an action-packed experience with overpowered abilities. It's extremely telling that my favorite slugcat is still Hunter, and I have much more fun with him than any of the downpour slugcats. Some gameplay changes were necessary, as I said. The downpour slugcats are mechanically fun, they just don't feel like Rainworld, and having them be more grounded would have made them more compelling. Narratively, Downpour took a much worse turn. Downpour's dialogue is bad. Let's play a game. I'm gonna read off 4 conversations between 7 red suns and no significant harassment. 3 of them come from people role-playing as Iterators on the Rainworld Discord server, and 1 of them is from Downpour. I purposed a messenger and sent the information by land via a data pearl. How original of you. I learned from the best. At least I used it for something more practical. If you call that practical, sure. Look how well things turned out. What is the matter? For what I'm about to admit, I know you'll tease me. Despite that, I confess I am growing attached to the messenger I sent out. Huh. So you've gotten a soft spot for it? Well, yes. They are a very expressive little creature. I only recall that you used to be repulsed by them. Yes, but with all the time I've invested, I've come to care for its safety. Not only because it's delivering an important message. I am going to tell everyone this juicy information. No, you are not. I know. I kid. Anyway, I just hope that it can return back to me safely, and perhaps forgive me for this difficult quest. The little messenger I sent out, I'm worried for its safety. I'm sure it'll be okay. You said it's built to withstand a lot of things. Yes, but the pearl was inside of the messenger's chest. Last time, Five Pebbles was very gentle and careful with removing it. This time, he simply slashed open the chest and ripped the pearl out. The messenger was struggling to stand. Big sister. Yes, absolutely. However, Five Pebbles had a very strong drive for independence. He was never one to be told what to do. I think a lot of us will look at in the beginning. I remember being in that phase a very long time ago. It takes many iterations for our world views to develop for us to realize flaws in those lines of thinking. Unfortunately, from what I've seen, Five Pebbles seemed to have plateaued at that phase. No, that's not true. I was helping him to get past it. We were making good progress, actually. The current situation, however, is going to be a very big setback. Can you tell which one is real? That's right, it's all of them. This is real dialogue in the game. Spearmaster's campaign is filled with 7 red suns and no significant harassment, narrating what's going on and gossiping like high schoolers. NSH uses tildes when he talks. This reads like fanfiction. Now, NSH and SRS did appear in a few data pearls in the base game. From these pearls, we can tell that the different iterators do have personalities, make jokes, etc. The only things we see NSH do are make lighthearted comments about Erratic Pulse's plan and make a few jokes in Hunter's data pearl, while 7 Red Suns is shown teasing 5 Pebbles, but overall being fairly mature and caring about him. The thing with the broadcasts is that they take the very minimal information about these iterators shown in short comments in data pearls and make them their entire personality. While doing so, they fail to make them feel like iterators. Remember, these are giant organic supercomputers. In the data pearl, 7 Red Suns briefly teases Pebbles and then gets into logic-based speech. They talk about things in a mechanical way. This is computational theory. We are machines designed to iterate. There is not a single line of dialogue in the broadcasts where 7 Red Suns speaks like that. It's evident that they care for 5 Pebbles, but when I say it reads like fanfiction, I mean it's taking a small trait displayed in the source material and stretching that out to be their entire characterization while neglecting an important aspect that makes the character feel unique. This feels like a conversation between biological supercomputers. This doesn't. Why do these broadcasts exist at all? In terms of gameplay, these are randomly scattered across the world, and upon touching them, you get a slowdown effect as text crawls across the screen. It's a jarring disconnect, bordering on breaking the fourth wall. Everything in-game stops, and you just read through the DMs of iterators. You can't skip them either. As a reminder, Spearmaster does not have the mark of communication until meeting Moon. Why can they understand these broadcasts, or do they just exist as a meta-narrative for the player to read through? That's a massive shift from the base game trying very hard to immerse the player as the Slugcat. Why does the player need to read them? They're events that you already know are happening or are revealed to you as you play. Spearmaster's campaign is not made better by reading through the local group's Discord server. Moon says this in Rivulet's campaign. This is the dialogue that the campaign ends on. This is what Moon says to Hunter when he revives her and if he returns. This is incredibly somber dialogue and has a lot of emotional weight behind it. If Hunter was written during Downpour, Moon would have said, "All I can do is express how thankful I am. You have given this giant organic superstructure some time and brought life to a godlike entity of which you have no understanding, despite not having a lot of it yourself." But why? Think I'm exaggerating? That's basically what she says to Rivulet. The role of the Slugcat changed drastically in Downpour as well. You are now a godlike creature sent by godlike creatures to save godlike creatures. The world takes a back burner as Iterators become the main focus. You are not a mild nuisance to passing gods. You are the gears that turn to decide their fate. Downpour is not what fate is Slugcat, it's what fate in Iterator. And if you weren't sure what's happening in the world, don't worry, Downpour's got you covered. Man, I wonder what's going on with this rain. Don't worry, Moon will tell you it's due to Pebbles' failing machinery rather than letting the player figure that one out. I wonder what my role as Spear Messenger is. Where do I messenger? What does Moon need me to messenger? Holy shit, Five Pebbles just ripped something out from my chest. I better check in with 7 Red Suns and no significant harassment so they can explain what just happened. Downpour also greatly altered the lore of Rainworld and the way that the player interacts with it. Iterators before Downpour were incomprehensible god machines that existed far outside the food chain. Downpour feels like one of those animes where all the characters are high schoolers for no reason. Slugcats were retconned to be the favored creatures of Iterators rather than nomadic beasts that happened to cross paths with gods. The recharacterization of Iterators makes sense, as the story has shifted to have them be the primary focus. In that recharacterization, though, the alien nature of their being was lost. They now experience the same emotions we feel as humans, acting as a human would act. Five Pebbles becomes enraged when forced to confront his mistakes, shutting out his friends trying to help. Over time, he realizes his failures and grows, choosing to sacrifice his well-being to aid Moon. Does this make the story more empathetic? Yes, but they don't feel like the alien machines that are, if you'll excuse me, godlike in comparison. They feel like human beings that happen to control giant machines. Let's look at Five Pebbles' dialogue. In Survivor, he's cold. He often uses short, declarative statements. You're stuck in a cycle. You want a way out. This does not make you special. He seems annoyed, not at the player but at the nature of his existence. Each sentence he speaks reveals more of a mysterious world. The cycles are not a game mechanic, they are a reality. Every creature wants an escape, but not even this godlike entity can find it. This machine was built to solve the problem by a species no longer in existence, but the machine is failing. The world is dying, and an answer is no closer to being found. But the small beast on the chamber floor is different. There is a path for them, out west past the farm arrays, then down into the earth where the land fissures, as deep as you can reach, where the ancients built their temples and danced their silly rituals. Let's compare that to the arrival of Gourmand in Downpour. His sentences are longer and more uncertain. Perhaps I underestimated. I may have been more rash. I would hesitate to believe. Might well imply. I do not believe. The only uncertainty in Five Pebbles' Survivor dialogue is when he states, I think I know what you're looking for. Compare, I can't help you collectively or individually. I can't even help myself. 2. I do not believe my intended purpose will be much help to you. I can, however, encourage you and your kind to leave my facility grounds. Survivor may not be the best comparison. Five Pebbles is not annoyed with Survivor, whereas he is annoyed with Gourmand. Let's compare it to Monk, to whom Five Pebbles treats similarly to Gourmand. There is only a single question in both Monk and Survivor's dialogue. Is this reaching you? Five Pebbles is confident, assertive, and superior. He is cold and distant, treating the player as an annoyance, but one he begrudgingly aids nonetheless. His disdain for his role is palpable. With Gourmand, he is not confident, he is not assertive, he clearly still feels superior, yet he is also polite. Five Pebbles is more rude to Monk than he is to Gourmand, and he spends a lot of dialogue making fun of Gourmand's size. This change carries over to even the smallest of statements. Look at these two versions of the godlike in comparison line. The first is what he says to Survivor and Monk, the second what he says to Gourmand. Notice the change from who am to who is? That tiny grammatical tweak significantly changes how the sentence is interpreted. It goes from a stilted, pretentious statement that sounds wrong to a more fluid and proper English sentence. The player understands the meaning regardless, but one feels alien and improper, as if it's being translated, which it is. Let's look at Hunter. Five Pebbles is assertive, confident, but treats Hunter with something resembling respect, particularly when carrying the neuron fly. I will do what I can to assist you. Unless you are aware, you are not well. I was not a medical facility even when the equipment was functioning, but I will attempt to do something to buy you a little time. You do not have much time. It is admirable what you choose to do with it. That is somber, but factual. It's machine-like, but moving. That is who Five Pebbles was. The uncertainty Five Pebbles shows revolves around events he doesn't know. Does Hunter know of his illness? Will the old path allow Hunter to escape his fate? Did Hunter deliver the neuron fly to Moon? If you visit Five Pebbles without the neuron fly, he will mention that you have something in common. The rot growing within you. He is resigned to his fate, but gives Hunter what little aid he can and tells you how to escape. There's a hint of compassion to a creature dying from the same illness. Of note, nothing during any of Five Pebbles' base game dialogue is comical. There are no jokes, no moments played for laughs. In Downpour, he gives Gourmand the mark of communication just to call him fat and tell him to leave. When Hunter arrives at Five Pebbles, he says, I barely listen to my overseers anymore. I have concluded that the movements of animals on the premises absolutely and completely lack relevance to my endeavors. With you, they have been very persistent since you entered my farm arrays. You were on an unusually deliberate path. Now you are here. When Artificer arrives, he says, I suppose it was only a matter of time before you ended up here. Your journey throughout my facility grounds have been incessantly brought to my attention by my overseers, thanks to the device that follows you. Those two dialogues are essentially saying the same thing, but feel completely different. Artificer's dialogue feels more casual and human. That is how an annoyed security guard would describe somebody showing up. No human being speaks like Five Pebbles does during Hunter. I have concluded that the movements of animals on the premises absolutely and completely lack relevance to my endeavors. Compare, you were on an unusually deliberate path. Now you are here. 2. I suppose it was only a matter of time before you ended up here. 1 reads like a machine, the other like a professor that's seen your math test scores when you show up to office hours. With Hunter, Five Pebbles is direct. With Artificer, he suggests genocide? I would encourage you to return home to your city and pay them a visit. Yeah, if you're not too busy, would you mind eradicating a species for me? By the time of Rivulet, Five Pebbles has matured and come to terms with his mistakes. He asks Rivulet to essentially end his life, giving it to Moon instead. He's grown as a person, and it's a touching story, but Five Pebbles is not a person. This is how a human being would act, not an organic machine. Rivulet's campaign is the most emotionally charged of the Downpour Slugcats, and I am not saying that it's bad. But this is not the same character that Hunter, Survivor, and Monk saw. Pre-Downpour Five Pebbles could have made a decision like this, but that version of Five Pebbles would not have spoken like this. Is Five Pebbles making fun of Rivulet for dying in his chamber funny? Yes, but seeing him go, that can't be good, when the player dies, this is not the same character anymore. And Spearmaster, Spear Mustard, Five Pebbles is emotional and angry, but he comes off as an angsty teenager. I don't even have things to say here, the dialogue speaks for itself. This is nothing like the base game. Where did his vocabulary go? Why does this read like it came off of Wattpad? So why does any of this matter? Why is the recharacterization of Five Pebbles a bad thing? Just because it's changed doesn't mean it's worse. As I said, Rainworld is a masterclass in atmosphere and immersion. You feel like part of an ecosystem. You and everything else has a place on the food chain. The game shows extreme restraint with revealing information to immerse the player as a slugcat in a hostile and unfamiliar world. The Iterators are god machines, far outside of your understanding, incomprehensible but benevolent beings. They become less compelling and interesting when reduced to speaking and acting like humans. When the slugcats escape the concept of the food chain and the ecosystem around you stops mattering, the game stops feeling like Rainworld. Outside of Saint, each of the Downpour campaigns boils down to go visit Five Pebbles, then go to a large new region where the game ends. Spearmaster goes to Looks to the Moon, Gourmand goes to Outer Expanse, Artificer goes to Metropolis, and Rivulet goes to Submerged Superstructure. Every one of these campaigns basically plays out the same. You immediately go to Five Pebbles, then go to your unique area and finish the game. It doesn't help that the quality of these areas is wildly inconsistent. Outer Expanse is absolutely gorgeous and quite fun. Submerged Superstructure is a nightmarish labyrinth where everything looks the same and it's all underwater. Metropolis is an action-packed city where you face off against the full strength of scavengers. Looks to the Moon is a much worse version of the exterior in Five Pebbles, which were arguably the worst regions in the base game. Imagine if, in Artificer's campaign, Five Pebbles sealed himself off entirely after Spearmaster, preventing entrance through his karma gates. Artificer's ID drone could lead her to Metropolis, perhaps flashing images of the Scavenger Chieftain in a similar way to Moon's Overseer flashing images of Moon. The ID drone currently feels useless. The only thing it does is open the gate to Metropolis. Without Five Pebbles telling her to kill the Scavenger, Artificer could have had a decision similar to meeting Moon for the first time, especially after encountering the Metropolis echo that urges her to find a way to break free from the cycle of violence. There could even be a dynamic canon similar to Moon's Cloak or Hunter Longlegs based on whether Artificer kills the Scavenger Chieftain. To be clear, Artificer can already choose not to kill the Scavenger Chieftain and instead try to ascend, but the narrative of that choice could have been implemented in a better way. Every Downpour Slugcat can ascend, but it's not presented as the correct ending of the campaign. Five Pebbles has nothing to do with Artificer. This campaign is about a mother coming to terms with the loss of her children, either through violence or acceptance, and the player should have experienced that in a different way. Let's take it a step further. Let's put Gourmand before Hunter on the timeline. After Spearmaster, Five Pebbles closes himself off, and he remains sealed for Artificer and Gourmand. Instead of getting the Mark of Communication, Five Pebbles' Overseers direct Gourmand to the Outer Expanse Gate, much like how Moon's Overseers guided Survivor to Moon. Are these better than the Downpour stories? I don't know, these are just basic concepts, but they're new narrative structures. These campaigns could have had more unique choices, but instead they all end up falling into the category of visit Five Pebbles, then go finish the game. I also feel that Downpour was severely lacking in the artwork department in-game. Artificer's campaign is a great example. Rainworld is incredible at conveying emotions through evocative artwork. Just look at the dreams that Survivor has. These are breathtaking. They wordlessly let the player know exactly what the Slugcat is feeling, the fears and loneliness that grip them as they wander through an unfamiliar world. I feel sadness, comfort, longing, and all of this is through a short image that shows up between cycles. Artificer is the main Downpour Slugcat to have dreams, and her dreams do not elicit the same response. It's all done in-game, either as a cutscene or a brief moment of player control. If you have control, nothing that you do matters. If Artificer was shown losing her slug pups like this, I would have been much more attached. That is the sort of emotional hell that a mother losing her kids is having nightmares about. This is moving. This is not. Spearmaster could have had dreams of being with Seven Red Suns to convey their relationship, rather than Seven Red Suns stating things outright in broadcasts. Five Pebbles ripping the pearl out of his chest could have been shown violently in a dream, much like how Survivor's encounter with him is shown. The base game is unparalleled at silent world building and atmosphere, telling as little as necessary and letting the player feel like the Slugcats. Downpour is a complete 180 in the opposite direction, and it's to the detriment of the DLC. The biggest failure of Downpour is the loss of the things that made Rainworld special to begin with. Do you know how many lineage dens are in Outer Expanse? 0. Metropolis? 0. Submerged Superstructure? 0. Looks to the Moon? 0. The new lineage dens in Waterfront Facility can't be anything other than an inside joke, a single drop rig that you will never see, a daddy longlegs that has a 1% chance of lineaging to a daddy longlegs, which has a 1% chance of lineaging to a daddy longlegs, which has a 1% chance of lineaging to a brother longlegs. The lineage system clearly wasn't forgotten, but for some reason almost no Downpour regions have lineage dens. The entire system to change the ecosystem in response to creatures dying is absent in those regions. For a game that prides itself on its simulated ecosystems and complex creatures, Downpour really didn't do well. Ask yourself this: what unique creatures did Downpour introduce? Something that is not a variation of an existing creature. You have giant jellyfish, inspectors, and yeeks. Giant jellyfish are almost never seen. Inspectors are a cool concept, but are just atmospheric entities that ignore the player unless provoked. Yeeks are great, but are found almost nowhere in the world and fill the same role as a slugcata. None of them feel like impactful additions to the world. As far as modifications to existing creatures, caramel lizards, aquapedes, and myros vultures are the only noteworthy additions. Eel lizards are discount salamanders, strawberry lizards only exist in saint unless lineaged, jungle leeches are leeches that drain your food instead of drowning you, and stowaways and mother longlegs might as well not exist with how rare they are. Elite scavengers are a great addition that you pretty much only ever interact with in Artificer. Spearmaster and Hunter might see a couple, and maybe a lineage one is Gourmand or Survivor if you try to. Mother spiders are so comically non-aggressive that they can just be ignored. How is it that a DLC for a game with such a focus on NPC AI and simulated ecosystems had so little to add? Perhaps the most egregious loss in the Downpour update came in the form of stability. As I'm sure you've noticed if you've played the game, Downpour is not very stable. The game crashes a lot. When I was doing Dancepad Rainworld campaigns, I would have multiple crashes per stream, sometimes losing a lot of progress. The game also has regular performance issues and lag. Expedition mode with the hunted burden is genuinely unplayable in many regions. I distinctly remember my first time playing Hunter. I had no idea what Hunter's campaign was, and I thought it was just a more challenging Survivor. Then, I realized my cycles were counting down. It's panic-inducing. What does that mean? Why are they counting down? What happens when they reach 0? You as a player have no idea, and at best, Five Pebbles and Moon will give you ominous hints of a grim fate. And Downpour changed Hunter's description to tell the player about it before starting. Not only does it diminish the slow burn reveal of Hunter's death, the description just doesn't flow as well as it used to. It has an ellipsis in the middle of it. That immersive experience that the base Rain world is so good at gets spoiled before it begins now. From the critical tone of this video, it may seem as though I dislike Downpour. I don't. For all of the faults that I've mentioned, let's talk a bit about what Downpour did right. The biggest accomplishment of Downpour was the revitalization of a community for a 6-year-old game. That achievement cannot be understated. A huge crowd of people who otherwise would never have played the game did because of Downpour, and the community is still active. Before Downpour, I described Rainworld as the best game I would not recommend because the harshness of the game made it difficult to approach. The customizable difficulty in the remix mod makes it easy to recommend to more casual players, and I greatly appreciate that. The Remix update also added the framework to easily download and use mods, granting quite a bit of additional replayability. Surprisingly, the game is about as stable with enormous numbers of mods as it is normally. Less stable than you'd like, but more than you'd expect when modded to hell. I really do love that the Remix menu exists for accessibility reasons. I know a lot of people that struggled to get into Rainworld because of the difficulty, and the Remix menu allowing ways to make the game easier and give more tutorials lets more people play. I appreciate that it's turned off by default so that players won't have new features like loading screen tips automatically enabled. I do think the classic preset in the Remix menu, which claims to keep the standard experience with minor changes, shouldn't keep those turned on though. Mechanically, Downpour added 5 fun slugcats. They might be overpowered, but they are fun to control. Running around at Mach 10 as Rivulet, slaughtering everything that moves as Artificer, crafting singularity bombs as Gourmand, you get to be powerful, which is something the base game never permitted. The tonal shift makes the game more action-packed and exciting. You're constantly fighting or dodging, and you can do it easily. The alternative Survivor and Monk endings are the best storylines added in Downpour. If you're not familiar, Monk and Survivor are siblings. Survivor falls during a storm, never seeing his family again as he plunges into the darkness. Monk dives in after him. Survivor searches for his lost family, while Monk searches for his lost brother. The two, in the base game, make their way to the Void Sea, finally reuniting at an ethereal slug tree after leaving the world behind. Why did they always search for an escape, as if we were imprisoned? What offering from the void could usurp the gift of life already given? This moment, right here, it is where we are meant to be. Downpour allows them to make their way back to their lost home in Outer Expanse. The two need not abandon the material world. Monk and Survivor are not searching for an escape, they're searching for each other. The player decides what fate a Slugcat. Their old family is forever gone, but a new one can be started. The cycle begins anew. Jolly Co-op is great if you have people to play with locally. It makes the game much easier and turns it into a lower stakes adventure with friends, especially if you play on easy or normal mode. It's more like an arcade game where each player can have very strong abilities and just tries to fight to the next shelter. Downpour also added a massive quantity of content outside of the campaigns. 70 challenges, 59 of which are actually fun. I adore the way that these challenges present information to the player. These are how the game should teach obscure mechanics. A lot of the challenges are designed to teach the player mechanics applicable in the base game, and it does that indirectly. The player is put in a room with everything they need to accomplish a task. They just need to solve the puzzle of how to use the items and creatures correctly. Challenge 1 is a sandbox to teach you how to fight lizards. Challenge 2 teaches you about stunning lizards with debris. Challenge 3 is where you learn you can pick up a scavenger spear while they're holding it and throw it at them. Challenge 8 teaches you lizard taming, 9 shows you how to trade with monster kelp, 41 is where you learn you can kill Myros vultures by stunning them and letting them fall. I could go on about them for a while, but they are some of the best game design of Downpour. I do think some of the challenges are poorly designed, but most of them are fantastic. Expedition mode is a great time, a whole separate game mode with its own challenges and unlocks. It can be a bit tedious, but it's a lot more fun than replaying the actual Downpour campaigns. You get to be extremely powerful with the perks, but you also face the possibility of permanent death and can give yourself extremely difficult challenges to face despite your power. The jukebox is an amazing addition, and I have spent many hours listening to it. It's something the game desperately needed, given how incredible the music is. My only disappointment with it is the lack of threat themes. Safari mode is a great time too, one that's often forgotten. You can control any of the creatures in the world wandering around in a land free of slugcats. Downpour was very clearly made with love and care. A ton of time and effort was put into it, and it shows, and I do enjoy the game, and it rekindled my love for it. I've beaten the game blindfolded, with voice controls, and all of the campaigns on a dance pad, even Blueberry. And in all that time, that initial charm of Downpour has worn off on me, and I feel that I can look at it more objectively. I don't like being this vocal with criticisms because I know it's made with love and I try not to be too negative, but it was not the masterpiece that Rainworld was. Rainworld was artwork told through the medium of game. Downpour is a great time, it's a fantastic DLC, but it lost the spirit of the game along the way. This video isn't made out of dislike of Downpour, it's made out of passion for what the game was before it. If Rainworld continues to receive updates, I hope that the developers remember what it was that made it such an incredible game to begin with.